It started with a sound. Not even something dramatic, no yelling, no slamming doors. Just the soft click of her heels against the apartment hallway and the faint jingle of keys. Familiar. Normal. But layered beneath it was something that didn't belong, a man's laugh. Quiet. Muffled. Too close to be coming from the street. And it stopped the second I heard the front door swing shut. I was standing in the kitchen. The light was off. I hadn't planned to stay up. I was halfway through a documentary when I realized I'd barely absorbed a minute of it. Something about Hannah's message earlier had thrown me. Just a simple, running late, don't wait up, but it didn't sound like her. Not exactly. Not the version of her I'd known for nearly 6 years. She walked in, humming, her heels clacking against the hardwood. A glass of red wine in her hand. Still dressed in the dark green silk dress she'd left the apartment in earlier that evening for her corporate party. Her hair was slightly tousled, lipstick a bit smudged. She looked good, too good for someone who'd supposedly spent the evening with coworkers and appetizers. "Hey, babe," she said, breezing past me toward the living room, not even pretending to be surprised I was awake. I didn't respond immediately. I was watching her hands. Something about the way she carried the wine, how casually she avoided eye contact, like she'd rehearsed this entrance in her head and was just trying to get through it. Then I noticed it. "Where's your ring?" Her head tilted, then followed her gaze to her own hand. As if she hadn't noticed. She gave a smirk and a shrug, setting the wine glass down on the coffee table. "Oh, yeah. I took it off at the party." My fingers were swelling a little. One of the girls joked I looked too available. "Guess that's what 3 glasses of bad champagne will do to you," she said, chuckling like it was the most harmless thing in the world. I didn't laugh. I didn't move. I just watched her. Hannah walked to the coat rack, dug through her pocket, and pulled out the ring, just like she said. Tossed it back inside casually and started toward the bedroom, kicking off her shoes along the way. I followed her with my eyes. That should have been enough. Should have convinced me. But something didn't fit. The laugh outside the door wasn't hers. And it wasn't female. It was low, amused, fading quickly behind the sound of our door shutting. She hadn't come in alone. Not really. And if she had nothing to hide, why did she wait until the very last second to come in? Why did she stop right outside? I walked over to the window facing the street. Looked down. Nothing but the glow of a street lamp and an empty sidewalk. Whoever it was, they were long gone. I sat back down, picked up my phone, and opened Instagram. Hannah's coworkers often posted stories from their company events, inside jokes, speeches, group photos. Something in me needed to see something. To either quiet the noise in my head or confirm what I didn't want to believe. It didn't take long. I found the story within minutes. It was taken from the bar, dim lights, blurry background, but clear enough. There she was. Hannah. No ring. Standing way too close to a man I didn't recognize. He had dark hair, broad shoulders, and his hand rested lightly, too comfortably on her waist. She was laughing at something he'd said, leaning in. She didn't even notice someone had taken the picture from behind. A colleague had tagged the location. It wasn't the venue she'd mentioned earlier in the week. This wasn't the upscale hotel downtown where they were supposedly hosting a networking event. This was a bar in Midtown, known for its cocktails and loud music, not exactly a corporate setting. I stared at the image for a long time. Tried to come up with an explanation. Maybe they left the party and hit a bar afterward? Maybe he was just a coworker and it was innocent? But my gut told me otherwise. I knew Hannah. I knew how she carried herself. And I knew how she looked at people when she was trying to impress them. This wasn't just casual fun. This wasn't harmless networking. This was something else. I scrolled back through older posts, trying to get a better look at the guy. Another photo surfaced, this one even worse. It was him, same suit, standing next to her at the bar with 2 drinks in his hand. Her hand on his arm. Her body language open, inviting. Too familiar. I locked my phone and stared into the dim living room where the glow of her wine glass caught the light like it had something to say. I should have asked more questions. I should have walked into the bedroom and demanded the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I sat in the dark, listening to the shower turn on, the bathroom fan humming. I tried to remind myself that relationships need trust. That maybe I was overreacting. That the photos could have been taken out of context. But another voice inside me, the one I'd ignored too many times, kept whispering, she wasn't alone. And that whisper didn't stop. I didn't sleep that night, not even close. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling her breathing slow beside me as she drifted off effortlessly, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't walked in at midnight with someone else's laughter trailing behind her. her ring buried in her coat, her lies already scripted and delivered. And that's when it started. My mind spun like a reel, playing back every small moment I'd ignored. Every scene I had filed under "not a big deal," or "she's just tired," or "maybe it's me." But it wasn't just me. Not anymore. Started with her phone. She used to leave it everywhere, on the counter, the nightstand, the armrest of the couch. But over the last month, it had become an extension of her hand. She carried it into the bathroom, even if she was just brushing her teeth. The screen was always face down. Always. She started wearing her wireless headphones constantly, even when she was just doing dishes, walking to the mailbox, folding laundry. I'd catch her smiling at something, sometimes laughing under her breath, and when I'd ask what was so funny, she'd just shake her head and say, "Oh, just a meme." I never saw the meme. She started carrying her phone charger with her everywhere, even to the grocery store. At first, I thought nothing of it. She said her battery had been acting up. Fair enough. But then it kept happening. Every time she left the house, the charger went too. Who brings a charger to go buy milk? And then there was the time I came home unexpectedly. I had forgotten my lunch. Just a dumb mistake. I left my sandwich sitting in the fridge like an idiot. I drove home, thinking I'd sneak in quietly, surprise her maybe. She worked from home 2 days a week. But when I walked in, the house was oddly silent. No keyboard clacking. No conference call noise. Just the low hum of her voice coming from the bedroom. I stopped in the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and I peeked through the crack. She was in her robe, sitting cross-legged on the bed, video chatting with someone. I couldn't hear what he said. She'd muted his side, but her expression said enough. She looked alive, bright, like someone I hadn't seen in a while. When she saw me in the doorway, she jumped like I'd set off a firecracker behind her. Slammed the laptop shut so fast it nearly bounced off the bed. "I thought you were at work," she said, trying to smile, adjusting the belt on her robe. I wasn't feeling great, so I canceled meetings and just relaxed. She called it the flu. Said she didn't want to worry me. I believed her. I told myself she was tired. I told myself it was nothing. But now it felt like watching the security footage of your own house getting robbed and realizing the burglar came in through the door you left unlocked. There were other things, too. Smaller, easier to miss, but they stood out now like red flags planted everywhere in hindsight. She stopped making eye contact during conversations. Her hugs got shorter. Her kisses turned into quick pecks, like she was punching a clock. The touch that used to linger. Fingers on my neck, her hand resting on my back while I did the dishes, disappeared altogether. And her scent changed. She used to wear this soft, lavender lotion I bought her one Christmas. She wore it every day. I'd come to associate that smell with home, with her, with us. But over the last few weeks, I noticed it had been replaced. Something sharper, muskier, new. I mentioned it once and she brushed it off. "It was a sample someone gave me," she said, already turning away. "Thought I'd try it." She never asked if I liked it. Then there were the meetings. Meetings she never used to have. She worked in HR, middle management, predictable hours. Her calendar used to be an open book, filled with scheduled calls and performance reviews and casual Friday reminders. Lately, though, she started adding block time labeled internal catch-ups or strategy syncs. No names attached, no real details. I asked once, jokingly, "Are you getting promoted or recruited by the CIA?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're so nosy," she said, kissing me on the forehead and grabbing her coat. "I'll be back late. Don't wait up." I waited up. She came home smelling like wine and walked straight into the shower without saying a word. I should have asked more questions. I should have pressed harder. But the thing about being in love is that it makes you complicit in your own blindness. You don't want to see the cracks, so you pretend they're shadows. You tell yourself a marriage has ups and downs. You tell yourself that maybe she's just going through something, that it'll pass, that it's just stress. But stress doesn't explain the ring. Stress doesn't explain the man outside our apartment at midnight. Stress doesn't explain the way she looked when she came home. Flushed, buzzing, like a teenager sneaking in past curfew. I got up quietly and walked into the living room, sat down on the couch, opened her Instagram, checked her tagged photos again. There weren't many, but the ones I saw all had something in common. She wasn't wearing her ring. Not in any of them. She had stopped tagging me in posts altogether. When I asked her about it once, she said, "I don't want to mix my personal life with work stuff." Seemed reasonable at the time. I nodded and let it go. But now I saw it for what it was, a slow erasure, a distancing. She wasn't hiding me from them. She was hiding them from me. I opened our wedding photo album. We hadn't looked at it in months. I flipped through the pages. The way she had looked at me, that first dance, the letter she'd written in shaky cursive tucked behind one of the photos. "You're my safe place," she'd written. "My home." I ran my finger over the words. Then I set the album aside and stared out the window. It was still dark, but morning would come soon. And with it, a decision I didn't think I'd ever have to make. By the next morning, I wasn't wondering anymore. I was watching. I waited until she left for work. She wore her usual neutral-toned blouse and black slacks, her hair pinned up in that perfect, effortless bun. She kissed me on the cheek. Light, practiced. Not cold, but not warm either. Just obligatory. Then she was gone. The second the door closed, I moved. Walked straight to the living room cabinet, opened the drawer where we kept all the random household gadgets, batteries, measuring tape, those IKEA Allen keys nobody ever uses, and the small controller for our indoor pet camera. We'd installed it 2 years ago when we first adopted Luna, our rescue beagle. Hannah insisted it was so we could watch her during the day, but honestly, we'd stopped checking it months ago. The app was still installed on my phone though. I opened it, logged in. The camera was still connected, still recording. I hadn't touched the archive feature in forever, but it was there. A full history of clips organized by date and time. I scrolled back. My fingers paused over the night she came home late. The night with the wine glass, the smirk, the missing ring. I hit play. The video began with nothing. Just our living room, lit softly by the hallway lamp we always leave on. The clock on the wall blinked 11:52 p.m. empty frame. Then, at 11:53, the front door opened. She walked in. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, a man followed. Tall, broad-shouldered. His face was angled away from the camera, but the outline of his hair and the sharp line of his jaw were unmistakable. Hannah didn't flinch. She didn't act surprised or cautious or even remotely concerned. She smiled, handed him a glass of wine, the same glass she would later use while talking to me. They sat on the couch, close. Her knees were turned toward him, legs barely brushing. He leaned in and whispered something. She laughed, soft, real, not the fake laugh she used at work functions. Then she took off her shoes, slid them off like she owned the moment, like she was home. At 11:59, she stood up and walked out of the camera's view. He followed. The hallway to our bedroom was off-screen. They didn't return for 41 minutes. When the living room reappeared, he came first, buttoning his shirt, tucking it back into his slacks like it had come loose. Hannah walked him to the door, still barefoot, her smile softer now. She reached up and kissed him on the cheek, but not in a way that said goodbye. In a way that said, next time. Then he was gone. She closed the door, stood still for a moment like she was collecting herself, then turned and walked toward the bathroom. She didn't put the ring back on. The camera kept rolling. I sat frozen. I played the clip again, then a third time. Each pass made me feel more detached, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. But it wasn't. It was mine. I saved the footage, exported it in 3 formats: MP4, AVI, MOV. I uploaded it to a secure drive and emailed it to myself from 2 separate accounts, labeling them something boring enough that even if she stumbled across them, she wouldn't bother opening them. I made copies on a flash drive and buried it inside an old shoebox filled with tax documents in the back of my closet. It sounds obsessive, but I wasn't thinking clearly. I just knew I needed proof. Real proof. Because as much as my heart had known for days, maybe weeks, my mind still needed to see it in black and white. And there it was. Not a suspicion. Not a theory. Not a manipulated story or a convenient misunderstanding. No more, maybe I'm overthinking it, or she'd never do that. This was the moment the foundation cracked clean in half. And it was also casual. That's what haunted me most. Not the physicality, not the betrayal itself, but the ease. The way she laughed. The way she moved. Like this was routine. Like she'd done this before. Like she'd figured out how to sneak a man into our home and out of our lives without me noticing until now. I didn't confront her. Not immediately. I didn't rage or scream or even cry. I just sat there in the quiet of our living room watching the ghost of her walk across our floor. It felt surreal. Like I died and she kept living. The hours passed in a blur. She texted around noon. "Hannah, hey babe, how's your day going? I'm drowning in reports. Can't wait to just relax later." I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. What could I say? Me, yeah, same. We'll unwind tonight. The words felt foreign on my screen. But I sent them anyway. I needed time. Not to forgive. Not to reconcile. But to understand what came next. What I wanted from this wreckage. That night, she came home earlier than usual. Walked in like she had every other day for years. Kicked off her heels, made some tea, kissed me on the cheek. "Missed you," she said, curling up next to me on the couch. And I let her. I sat there, still and hollow, with my arm draped around the woman I no longer recognized. The woman who had shattered something essential in me and was now pretending it never happened. She pulled a blanket over both of us, her head on my shoulder. We watched some old crime show on Netflix. She laughed at the detective's dry humor, sipped her tea, even nudged me when she guessed the K*lure before the reveal. I couldn't breathe. Her body was warm against mine, but it felt like hugging someone dressed in someone else's skin. I excused myself after an hour, said I was tired. She said she'd be up soon, just wanted to finish the episode. I nodded. In the bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed. Looked at the nightstand where our wedding photo used to be. It was gone. I didn't even realize she'd removed it. I opened the drawer. Empty. That photo had been there for 3 years. At some point recently, I guessed she decided it didn't belong there anymore. Just like me. Something inside me hardened. I didn't break down. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask why. The part of me that wanted an explanation, some kind of emotional accounting, it had died sometime between the second and third playback of that camera footage. What replaced it was a strange, detached clarity. Like everything had finally come into focus and I was no longer the man grasping for pieces of the truth. I had it all. And now I had to decide what to do with it. Not just emotionally, but strategically. I spent the next morning pretending everything was normal. We made coffee together. She kissed me on the cheek before heading to the office. She left her empty mug in the sink like always, with that faint red stain of her lipstick on the rim. A part of me stared at it like it was evidence. A forensic clue. And maybe it was. The moment the door closed behind her, I got to work. First, I opened the footage again. Paused it. Screensh * T key frames. Her walking in with him. Their legs touching on the couch. Him buttoning his shirt. The kiss at the door. I labeled each one with the exact timestamp. Then I exported the stills into a folder labeled Insurance. Next, I drafted a message. Not to her. To myself. A bullet point breakdown of everything I'd gathered so far. Dates, behaviors, inconsistencies. I needed to keep my emotions out of it. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was a case file. Then I dug deeper. I pulled up her LinkedIn. Cross-referenced her company staff page. I had a face now thanks to the camera footage. I found him in under 10 minutes. His name was Scott R. Donnelly. Marketing consultant. Freelance contractor. Formerly worked at a digital agency 2 blocks from her office. But there was more. His last name sounded familiar. I ran it through my email history and found it instantly. Rachel Donnelly, Hannah's best friend since college. The one who'd stood beside her at our wedding, the one whose family Hannah called her second home growing up. Scott wasn't just some coworker. He was Rachel's older brother. And he was married. With 2 children. 2. The last photo on his profile was from a Christmas post, him holding a toddler in one arm, a girl about 6 in the other, and a woman smiling beside them. His wife. His life. And he was destroying it in my living room. I sat back, feeling like I'd swallowed fire. But again, I didn't react, not outwardly. I stayed still. Breathed. I knew what I had to do next. I called my bank. Requested to transfer half our joint account funds into a separate account, one solely in my name. The representative was polite, asked routine questions. I gave simple answers. Protective measure, I said. Just in case. Then I called my lawyer, not our lawyer, mine. The one I'd used years ago to review a contract. I asked for a discreet consultation. Told him it was urgent, but I wanted everything quiet. No calls to the house. No paperwork sent in the mail. I explained the situation briefly, omitting names. He told me I was doing the right thing. Said if I could prove infidelity, especially with video, asset protection would be more straightforward. I emailed him the footage. Then I blocked Hannah's credit card. Quietly. It was linked to our shared account. I didn't cancel it, just froze it. Enough to keep her from draining it or doing something impulsive if things got messy. Next, I called a print shop. I didn't want to just send her the footage in a drive or email. That felt too clinical, too easy to ignore. I wanted her to sit with it, to feel the weight of what she'd done. I asked the shop if they could print photos into a bound album. Hardback, professional, like a wedding photo book. I said. The irony wasn't lost on me. They said yes. I sent the images. Asked for 2 copies. 2? The guy asked. 1 for her, I said. 1 for his wife. Silence. Got it, he said. By noon the next day they were ready. I picked them up in person. Each book was sleek, black, understated. No title on the front. Just images, page after page, with timestamps, dates, and soft matte paper that made the betrayal feel even colder. I labeled the inside covers, "For your honesty," nothing else. That evening, I told Hannah I had a dinner planned at her parents' place. Her dad was hosting one of those traditional family nights. Home-cooked meals, everyone at the table, no phones allowed. She brightened at the idea. "Oh, that's nice," she said. "Did you tell them I'd be coming too?" "No," I said. "Thought I'd surprise them." I smiled. So did she. She had no idea. The next day, I called her father directly. Told him I wanted to bring something by ahead of dinner. Something important. He sounded puzzled, but I could hear the concern in his voice. "Is everything okay, son?" he asked. "It will be," I said. "I just need you to wait until she's there to open it." He paused. "All right, you have my word." I arrived at the house early, greeted everyone with a smile. Her mom hugged me tightly, asked about work. Her brother joked about our fantasy football league. I played along, sitting quietly, waiting. Then I placed 3 envelopes on the table, 1 for each of them. Her mother, her father, her brother. Inside each was a summary of what I'd found. Photos, printed messages, and a copy of the album. I told them not to open them yet. "Wait until she gets here," I said. "Please." They looked confused, but they nodded. At 7:35 p.m. sharp, the front door opened, and there she was. Same green dress, the one from the footage, a gift bag in her hand, hair curled, confident. She stepped into the house, saw everyone gathered around the table, and smiled. Until she saw me, until she saw the albums. Then she froze. The silence that followed was thick and brutal. I stood. "This isn't a mistake," I said. "It's an explanation." Her face went pale. The bag slipped from her hand and landed softly on the carpet. No one moved. Her father opened the envelope first. When he reached the center spread, Scott buttoning his shirt while she stood barefoot behind him, his hands shook. Her mother flipped through the screensh *TS. Her mouth parted in shock. No one said a word, except for her brother. He muttered a single word under his breath. "Scott." And that's when she broke. She reached for the album, tried to explain. "It's not." But her voice cracked. She didn't finish the sentence. Her father stood and walked out of the room. Her mother followed. Her brother stayed, just staring at her. I didn't raise my voice, didn't say anything cruel. I just turned, walked to the door, and paused. She called out my name. I didn't answer. I left the way she came in, with silence. I didn't expect the silence afterward to feel so loud. No slamming doors. No screaming. No begging. Just the sound of paper turning and people breathing. And then nothing. I walked out of her parents' house like I'd stepped off a stage. My part was done. The curtain had fallen. But the story wasn't over. The next few days were a blur. She called me 23 times, left voicemails, some tearful, some angry. One almost sounded like the Hannah I used to know, soft, full of guilt, pleading for a conversation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I watched the fallout unfold from a distance. Scott's wife found her copy of the photo album first. According to a mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years but who messaged me out of nowhere. She got it while picking up the mail with her daughter. I didn't intend for it to happen that way. But then again, none of this had gone according to plan. The truth rarely waits for the perfect moment. Within hours, Scott's family imploded. His wife posted a long, carefully worded message online. Something about betrayal, about trust, about protecting her children. The post didn't name names, but the comments did. By morning, *TS of my photo album, particularly the timestamped image of Hannah and Scott walking into my apartment, had been shared and reshared across multiple group chats, private accounts, even 2 Facebook neighborhood forums. I hadn't posted it. I never planned to. But someone else had. I didn't care. Let it burn. Hannah didn't go to work that week. Her social media went dark. Even Rachel, her best friend and Scott's sister, deleted her Instagram after commenting something cryptic on her story. Some people deserve what's coming. The most surreal part of it all was how ordinary my own life felt. I still got up at 6:30 a.m., made coffee, fed the dog, took out the trash. But beneath the routine there was a shift. A strange weight had lifted. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt still. No more wondering. No more second-guessing. No more checking for her ring, her perfume, her excuses. She had nothing left to hide. And I had nothing left to save. But that didn't mean it was over. Not entirely. Because the truth had a way of digging up more than you intended. And what came next was something I didn't see coming. It started with a message. From a name I vaguely recognized. Emma. She had interned at Hannah's office last year. I met her once at a holiday party. Bright, ambitious, barely out of college. At the time, I thought she was just shy. She barely spoke, mostly nodded, smiled politely. Her message was short. Emma, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I saw the photos. And I think you should know it's not just you. It's not just your marriage. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I'm listening. She responded with a wall of text. Long story short, she'd had a fling with Scott too. But it hadn't been mutual, not really. It started with compliments, mentorship, then late meetings, then pressure. When she tried to end it, he threatened to expose their messages, claimed he had photos, said it would ruin her chances at a job after graduation. She'd quit the internship early. No one asked why. She'd stayed silent ever since. Until now. That message opened a door I hadn't planned to walk through. Because suddenly this wasn't about me anymore. Not just a marriage blown to pieces. Not just broken vows. This was something else. A pattern. A man who we *P***nice charm. Who used his proximity to power, his good guy persona, to creep behind doors no one was watching. And I had video of him doing just that. I pulled out the flash drive again. Started combing through old files. Most were boring, birthday clips, dog videos, Hannah singing off-key while cleaning. But buried inside a backup folder labeled Camera Sync Archive, I found something I hadn't remembered recording. It was from a party. Months ago. Back when I still trusted everyone in the room. Scott was filming with his phone, doing one of those man-on-the-street style joke interviews. He asked women to describe their dream vacation, their worst date, their guilty pleasure. But what struck me was how many of them clearly didn't know they were being filmed. Some looked uncomfortable. One woman even asked, "Wait, are you recording this?" He laughed it off. Said it's for internal team bonding. Gross. I found 2 other videos where he was talking to women alone, saying things like, "Let's grab coffee sometime, off the record," or "You've got real potential, happy to mentor you one-on-one." The tone was casual. The intent was not. I copied everything. Called my lawyer. Told him I had new evidence. Not just for the divorce, but possibly for something more. He asked if I wanted to pursue it through HR channels at their company. I said no. We went higher. Law enforcement. A quiet inquiry. No press. Not yet. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. And this time it wasn't just about Hannah's lies. It was about every woman who didn't have footage or photos or a platform to speak from. And for once I was in a position to say something that would matter. Hannah texted me 2 days later. "Hannah, can we talk?" I ignored it. Then another. Hannah, you've made your point. Please stop this. Think about how this affects everyone. That one I responded to. Me, I did. That's why I'm not stopping. She didn't reply again. Instead, she mailed a letter to my lawyer. A quiet agreement to divorce. No contest. No demands. Not even a request to retrieve personal items. It was over. At least legally. But emotionally? I was still walking through the wreckage. Picking through what was real, what was fiction, and what was left of the man I had been before all of this began. Friends started checking in. Some with genuine concern. Others with that mix of curiosity and pity people bring when they hear about someone else's disaster. Most of them had no idea what really happened. But one night, at a bar I hadn't visited in years, a woman approached me. Said her name was Celeste. Used to work in PR, knew Hannah barely. Knew Scott better. He's been doing this forever, she said over her drink. No one ever calls it what it is. Just little affairs. Office gossip. But it's more than that. It's a game to him. I nodded. Didn't say much. She leaned in, voice lower. Good on you. For not letting it slide. And then she left. That was the moment it hit me. This story, my story, wasn't just mine anymore. It was bigger. Messier. And it mattered. Because maybe silence is how people like Scott survive. But not this time. I used to think the worst thing someone could do in a relationship was cheat. I thought infidelity was the final line, the point of no return. But after everything I'd learned, that line didn't even matter anymore. What Hannah did, it wasn't just a betrayal of our vows. It was a door opening to something darker, something that spread well beyond us. Emma wasn't the only one. After I handed the footage and chats to my lawyer, the authorities opened a quiet investigation. The videos of Scott filming women without their consent, the emails hinting at coercion, the pattern of singling out younger, vulnerable staff, it painted a picture. Not just of a man who cheated, but a man who manipulated. By the end of the week, 3 more women had come forward. None of them knew each other. All of them had similar stories. Scott had dangled professional opportunities, made promises, then blurred boundaries under the guise of mentorship. And when things soured, he disappeared or threatened them with professional consequences. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt sick. All that time, while I was worrying about whether Hannah was drifting away, Scott had been working his way through an unspoken network of silence and fear. And Hannah? She wasn't innocent. She had to have known. She wasn't the victim of a one-time mistake, she was part of the system that helped protect him. She brought him into her home. Lied for him. Covered for him. That realization hit harder than the affair itself. She hadn't just broken my heart. She had shielded a predator. And that's something I couldn't forgive. A week later, I moved out. The apartment was technically mine, but I didn't want it. I didn't want the couch where they sat or the hallway where I heard his laugh. I didn't want the kitchen drawer that still held her favorite wine opener or the bed where I lay awake night after night pretending everything was fine. I found a place across town. Small. Clean. Quiet. 1 bedroom, 1 window that faced west, and just enough furniture to not feel hollow. I unpacked slowly, taking my time. For once, there was no pressure to rush, no one to explain myself to, no performance to keep up. The silence wasn't heavy. It was healing. I slept better than I had in months. No checking the clock. No listening for footsteps. No watching someone pretend to love me while hiding a double life. The divorce went through in 2 hearings. Quick. Clinical. She didn't contest a single detail. My lawyer said he'd never seen someone fold so completely. I guess she already knew the ending. 3 months later, I walked into a used bookstore on a rainy Saturday. I was browsing a shelf when my hand bumped into someone else's, both of us reaching for the same copy of East of Eden. She laughed softly and said, I've started this book 4 times and never finished it. I smiled. Same here. Her name was Jade. We talked about books, about terrible endings, about how some stories hurt you in all the right ways. She didn't ask what brought me to that store or why I looked like someone who had learned to live alone. She just asked if I wanted coffee. She came by my place a week later. She stood in the doorway, looked around, and said, it's peaceful here. That's when I realized what I'd found. Not just a place. Not just a rebound. But peace. Not silence that makes you question everything, but silence that finally lets you breathe. I had lost a version of my life I thought I couldn't live without. But what I found in its place. It was real. It was mine. And no one would take that from me again.